All right, let's dive into one of the wildest, most high-stakes business thrillers you've ever heard. We're talking about a miracle cancer drug, a CEO in full-blown panic mode, a global celebrity, and one single tiny lie that threatened to bring an entire empire crashing down. You're not going to want to miss this.
So, let me just ask you something. Imagine you get a phone call, a secret tip that could save you 45 grand on a stock that's about to tank. Do you take the call? Do you make the trade? Seems like a no-brainer, right? Well, for the people in our story today, that one simple choice kicked off a chain reaction that became a massive front-page national scandal.
Okay, so where does this all kick off? Well, it doesn't start with a crime. It doesn't start with a panicked phone call. It starts with a promise. A huge, revolutionary, world-changing promise from a company that was right on the verge of making history and making its investors incredibly rich.
So, let's meet our first main character, ImClone Systems. Now, this wasn't some shady startup. Founded way back in 1984 by the Waksal brothers, this was a legit biopharmaceutical company. And they had a very noble mission, to create brand new medicines to fight cancer.
And at the very heart of ImClone, the thing that made them tick was this one drug, Erbitux. Now, this thing was seen as the holy grail. It was a super smart drug that could, in theory, hunt down and attack cancer cells while leaving the healthy cells completely alone. This was a potential blockbuster, a total game changer.
And man, the hype around this thing, it was building for years. They got the rights to the molecule back in '93 and spent the next decade pouring everything into it. By 2000, the clinical trial results were coming in, and they were just stunning. We're talking reports of massive tumors shrinking down to nothing. Of course, that got the attention of the big players, which led to a monster deal with Bristol Myers Squibb in 2001.
And when I say monster deal, I mean it. Bristol Myers Squibb put down $2 billion with a B. This wasn't just some investment. This was a coronation. This was the market screaming that Erbitux was the real deal.
So picture this, it's late 2001. The science looks amazing. The big money is officially in. The stock is absolutely soaring. ImClone is on top of the world. There's just one final hurdle, one last box to check, getting that final green light from the FDA.
But while everyone on the outside was waiting for the champagne corks to pop, something very different was happening behind closed doors. A secret was being kept, and the company's CEO was starting to panic.
See, here's the thing. The public, they saw a total slam dunk. But the FDA, they saw a bunch of red flags. They had some really serious questions about how the company ran its clinical trials, putting that entire $2 billion deal on incredibly thin ice. And then, it happens. December 26th, the day after Christmas. The fuse is officially lit. The CEO, Sam Waksal, gets a private call, and the news is devastating. The FDA is rejecting their application. This information is pure dynamite. It's confidential, it's going to move the market, and right now, only he knows.
And Waksal, he knew exactly what this meant. There was no ambiguity here. As soon as this news got out, that $2 billion dream would turn into an absolute nightmare. The company's stock, which was trading at nosebleed heights based on this approval, was about to go right off a cliff. So what do you do when you're holding a financial grenade with the pin pulled? You panic. He immediately tried to dump a huge chunk of his own stock. We're talking nearly 80,000 shares. But when his broker wouldn't do it, he didn't stop. He picked up the phone. He called his daughter, Eliza. He called his father, Jack. He told them, sell everything, right now. And that, my friends, is the definition of insider trading. So, the secret? It's not a secret anymore. It's spreading. And through this desperate scramble to save his family's money, that illegal tip is about to jump from this tight family circle and into the stratosphere of celebrity. And this is where we get to that phone call we talked about at the beginning. The one little tip that saved one person a quick 45 grand, and in the process launched a story that would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world.
Okay, so how did this tip actually travel? It's like a game of telephone, but with millions of dollars on the line. Waksal's family starts frantically trying to sell their stock. Their broker, a guy named Peter Bukanovic, sees this sudden rush for the exits and realizes what's up. So he tells his assistant, Douglas Faniel, hey, you need to warn another one of our clients about this. A very, very important client.
And yeah, that client, flying high on her private jet,
on her way to a fancy vacation in Mexico, was none other than Martha Stewart, the queen of homemaking, a self-made media mogul, and, as it turned out, a pretty good friend of ImClone CEO Sam Waksal.
So Faniel gets her on the phone, right? He delivers the message. The Waksals are selling, and Martha, being a savvy investor, knew exactly what that meant. She immediately told him to sell all of her shares, all 3,928 of them.
And by making that move on December 27th, just one day before the bad news hit the streets, Stewart managed to sidestep a loss of exactly $45,673. And wouldn't you know it, the very next day, December 28th, ImClone makes it official. The stock just tanks, dropping 16% basically overnight. For Martha Stewart, the tip worked like a charm. She got out just in time, she'd saved her money. But the real story was just getting started.
You know that old saying, right? It's not the crime, it's the cover-up? Well, in this story, that's not just a cliche, it's everything. Because the investigation was about to pivot from a shady stock trade to a massive web of lies. So, of course, a trade that perfectly timed, it's going to set off some alarm bells. And sure enough, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, comes knocking. This document you see here, this is the official complaint. This is where the legal battle that captivated the entire country really begins.
So, when the Fed started asking questions, Stewart and her broker, Bukanovich, they had their story all lined up. They claimed, oh, no, it wasn't a tip. We had a verbal agreement to sell the stock if it ever dropped below $60 a share. It was a tidy little explanation. The only problem? It was a complete lie, cooked up after they realized they were in trouble.
But come on, how do you actually prove a verbal agreement didn't happen? It's just her word against theirs, right? Well, investigators got their hands on something, a digital smoking gun that blew the whole story wide open.
Well, you find something like this. This right here is the smoking gun. It's an excerpt from the SEC complaint, and it shows how investigators found out that a key piece of evidence had been changed after the investigation had already started. And that's when this story goes from insider trading to obstruction of justice. I mean, look at this. This is the moment the whole cover-up crystallizes. The government had testimony that Martha Stewart herself sat down at a computer and altered a phone log. She changed the original, very damning message from her broker to something much more innocent. And even though she changed it back a minute later, it was too late. The damage was done. She'd been caught.
And you know what? That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. The government, they didn't even need the insider trading charge anymore. They had her dead to rights on conspiracy, making false statements, and obstruction of justice. It wasn't about the $45,000 trade, it was about the lies she told to try and hide it.
All right, so let's get to the final act, the consequences, the fallout. And believe me, the final twist in the story of ImClone and its so-called miracle drug is absolutely unbelievable.
So let's look at the scoreboard. Sam Waksal, the guy who lit the match, he got slapped with more than 7 years in federal prison. The broker, Peter Bukanovich, got 5 months in prison and 5 months of house arrest. And Martha Stewart? She got the exact same sentence. 5 months in prison, 5 months home confinement.
And Martha? She ended up serving her time at a federal prison camp in West Virginia, a place famously nicknamed Camp Cupcake. And while she was there, she reportedly earned a new nickname for herself, M. Diddy.
But the prison sentence was only part of it. The financial hit was brutal. She had to pay a $30,000 fine, plus settle with the SEC for almost $200,000. She was banned from running a public company for 5 years. But the biggest hit of all? The stock of her own company got absolutely hammered by the scandal, costing her way more than the measly $45,000 she tried to save in the first place.
Okay, but this is where the story gets really crazy. Remember Erbitux, the failed drug that started this whole mess, the reason for all the panic and the lies? What do you think happened to it?
Check this out. While all the drama with Martha's trial is going on, ImClone's partners are quietly working in the background. They resubmitted the application for Erbitux, and in February of 2004, the FDA approved it. The drug that everyone thought was dead in the water was suddenly a huge success. A year later, Martha gets out of prison, and just a few years after that, the pharma giant Eli Lilly comes calling. They agreed to buy ImClone Systems, this company that was supposedly on the brink of disaster, for a mind-blowing $6.5 billion. Let that sink in. The company whose stock Martha Stewart sold to avoid a $45,000 loss became a multi-billion-dollar empire.
So that brings us right back to where we started, that one phone call. To save $45,000, she got a prison sentence, hundreds of thousands in fines, a reputation that took a massive hit, and she missed out on a company that would eventually be worth $6.5 billion. So I'll ask you one last time, was it worth it?